Hey everyone, today we're going to be taking a look at the Star Wars Black Series, the Book of Boba Fett action figure from the throne room. He comes in a deluxe packaging, with his blaster rifle and his blaster pistol on the side, and his helmet and jetpack on the right side. Moving down to the side of the packaging, the very distinct artwork of Boba Fett emerging to claim his position on the throne, which you can see in the backdrop. Moving on to the back of the packaging, there's the same artwork of Boba Fett, description of the character over here as he emerges from the Sarlacc pit, and some product information at the bottom. On the final side, there's that bit of the window to let the light in, and you can also see that same window at the top of the box. So these little windows are quite trademark of the Star Wars Black Series packaging. So now let's get this figure open. The backdrop in the box is a plain grey, and you can see the figure over here on the plastic tray with his accessories. There are no extra accessories hidden above or below the figure. First up, we're having a look at his pistol. It is cast in a grey gunmetal plastic. There's brown paint on the pistol grip. The pistol also has a sort of scope on the top, and you will see the same sort of detail on the other side as well. That pistol fits just fine into his right hand, which has a pistol grip. And you can also slot that pistol into the holster on the right side of his body. He also comes with a blaster rifle, also cast in the same grey gunmetal plastic. There's brown paint for the butt of the rifle, cool details down the barrel as well as a scope on the top. You will also see the same details on the other side. The interesting thing is that there is an additional hit of gunmetal grey paint over here. And here is just a quick comparison of the rifle that came with the Deluxe Boba Fett ROTJ figure. You can see that the sculpts are different, and the paint treatment is also different as well, with the ROTJ Boba Fett rifle having a copper dry brush that really brings out the details and wear and tear of the rifle. A quick look at the other side of the rifles as well. Once again, the new Boba Fett rifle ends up looking a little plain because of the lack of that dry brush. And the different sculpt of course makes sense because his previous rifle was sliced in two by Luke before he fell into the Sarlacc pit. And of course you can put that rifle into his trigger right hand. The barrel of the rifle might be a little thick, but you should be able to squeeze it into his left hand so he can hold his rifle in two hands at rest. Now taking a look at his jetpack, it is mostly cast in a dull green plastic. The missile at the top has paint applications of silver and yellow over here. That missile is also detachable so you can have him shoot it off. There's the main housing in the middle, and it's supported by two engines on each side. More paint applications of silver and gold over here. A dark red for this line at the top. Yellow over here at the top of the side engines. A very sharply applied logo over here in white. Very slight silver wear on the side of the main housing. And finally the two thrusters down the bottom on the sides. And these are also painted yellow. These thrusters also articulate, able to swing forward and back. Having a look at the bottom of the jetpack as well as on the inside, there are no further paint applications. We see three pegs over here, and these pegs will go on to the back of the Boba Fett action figure. And here's a quick side-by-side comparison of the jetpacks with the ROTJ Boba Fett. And you can clearly see that the sculpts are exactly the same, so Hasbro is getting a lot of mileage from this mold. What's massively different is of course the paint scheme. The previous one was definitely more eye-catching, with a lot of silvers to add the bling, as well as a very vibrant and striking color scheme with blue, yellows and oranges. While the new design over here is a lot more muted. And then finally we're having a look at his helmet. It still comes with a viewfinder, and that still rotates down for him to take aim at targets. The viewfinder is cast in a silver looking plastic with black paint at the top. He's got a distinct Boba Fett look on the front of his Mandalorian helmet, paint applications for red and black for his visor, as well as little applications of that silver for their wear and tear. Moving down to the sides, he's also still got those orange markings. And coming to the back, there is a deeper green paint along with the same red paint as well. That paint is also applied to the ribs on the back of his helmet. And coming down to the side of the housing for that viewfinder, this is painted in a light yellow. And of course, that helmet fits on just fine onto Boba Fett's head. You might have to squeeze it down just a little bit to make sure that it fits well. and comparing his helmet to the ROTJ Boba Fett, and it kind of looks like the same sculpt. The top of the new helmet just looks a little flatter for some weird reason. They are the same sculpt because there are a couple of similarities. First of all, his visor is still the same size. Next, he still has that same observable dent on the front left side of his helmet. Moving on to the sides as well, just ignore that his cape has fallen off. I've actually just peeled it off for a custom project. The strip on the sides of his helmet is also the same size, and when you come on to the back as well, we also still have the same ripped elements down the back of the helmet as well. And moving on to the sides of the viewfinder, once again also similarly sculpted and the same size. And one way of telling the helmet sculpt is still the same is by looking at the helmet from the Cobb Vanth Deluxe action figure. The Cobb Vanth helmet also similarly fits onto this new Boba Fett's head. Now looking on the insides of the helmet, I just realized that the new Boba Fett helmet actually has an additional black plastic attachment on the inside, and I suppose that would actually help that helmet sit higher and fit more to his bald head. And that black plastic attachment is possibly why his new helmet looks a little flatter on the top when compared to the other two. Now let's zoom in into his sculpt, and here's a closer look at his head sculpt. I like how it looks. It is undeniably Boba Fett from the Book of Boba Fett series. The digital face printing technique means that his eyes as well as his lips are all sharply painted on. There's even subtle shading for the wrinkles on his forehead and the lines on the side of his face. He does also come sculpted with scarring across his face. That scarring is also given some overspray of a shiny white paint. I don't really recall his scars looking white or ashy in the show, so while this extra paint application is a nice touch, it looks slightly overkill. We can look at the rest of his head sculpt as well. He's got ears sculpted on the side, and on the top and the back of his head is just a smooth bald head. And there's also a little bit of wrinkling over here at the top of his neck. Coming back down to the front of his torso, there's a dark brown plastic overlay on his torso, sculpted so that he's got a little bit of fabric around his neck. The armor is painted in a dull green. Nice small touches of paint applications like the red over here, as well as the silver for that chest piece in the middle. Silver paint is also applied to a couple of dings and dents. He's also still got his symbol on the right side of his chest. However, this symbol looks a little messed up. I'm not sure if this was intended from the factory, but from the couple of copies that I have observed, the logo looks pretty messy when applied on. Moving on to his arms, he's got a yellow shoulder armor piece. This is a separate yellow piece of plastic that's glued onto the rest of his arm, which is a dark brown. His wrist gauntlets are cast in a red plastic. This is the same sculpt as the gauntlets on the ROTJ Boba Fett, but now he's got less of that silver paint wear. The little rocket over here is still nicely and sharply painted in silver and black. And on his gloves, these are also cast in a brown plastic with a bit of dark metallic paint for that armor on the back of his hand, and a dark red for the rest of his fingers. On the back of the figure's torso, it's also the same dull green armor, and onto his right arm, the shoulder armor as well as his gauntlet together with those tubes appear to be reused from the Cobb Vanth figure. Once again, we also see that yellow shoulder armor, rest of the arm cast in a dark brown paint for those tubes, and a red gauntlet with a small hit of black paint over here. His right hand is also painted the same as his left hand. His belt piece is quite striking, cast in a dark brown plastic with the front drape over here. The belt is painted a lighter shade of brown, coupled with another shade of brown paint for his pouches on both sides. And overall, he's got an intricate belt buckle in the middle that's painted in gold. We can follow the belt down the sides and we see that it is all sharply painted all the way around. And coming down to the right side of that belt, he's got a holster that's cast in a brown plastic with a strap that goes around his right thigh. The belt piece also has a drape down the back. And now we have a look at his legs. They are cast in a dark brown plastic. The sculpt over here shows that he's got a baggy pants. And there's a folds sculpted just to show how baggy the pants is. We move on to his lower legs and he's got those yellow armored knee pads. These are glued above his lower legs, which are cast in a gray plastic. Likewise, those armored knee pads are also reused from the ROTJ Boba Fett. And then we come down to his shoes, which are cast in a different shade of plastic as well, with a bit of grey paint on the top of the shoe for that strap. And that's the only paint applications on his legs. For articulation, his head is on 2 ball joints, one at the top of his neck and one at the bottom, so that lets you get to spin his head sideways. He also gets some tilt right as well as left. He's able to look down that far with his chin being tucked into that fabric collar, as well as looking up quite a good bit. Just make sure that you get the back of his neck tucked into that collar as well. And because of the way his neck is constructed, you can also get him to stick his neck forward. He's got a swivel hinge at the shoulder, so it goes 360 as well as coming out that far. He's got a swivel just above that elbow, as well as a hinge at the elbow, so that gets you just about 90 degrees. And he can swivel that arm out as well as in. The 90-degree bend in his elbow is a little bit disappointing, and something that we've seen across all Black Series figures, so I'm hoping that they could improve that range with future figures. There's also a swivel just above his gauntlet, so that lets you turn his lower arm in and out. Swivel hinge at the left wrist, so you can spin his arm in and out, and that also gives you inward bend and outward bend. And because he's got a trigger hand on the right side, that gives you a swivel all the way around, and an up-down hinge that lets you hinge upwards as well as downwards. At the middle of his torso, he has a ball joint, so that lets you spin him 360, getting some sideways tilt as well. And here is his forward bend, which is not much, but he gets quite a bit of backward bend. The drapes on the front and the back are made of a flexible plastic, so they shouldn't get in the way of your articulation. That ball jointed hips are able to come out sideways quite far, and no problems forward and backward as well. He's got a thigh swivel, and that lets you spin his leg 360. His baggy pants actually conceals that knee joint quite well. You can see how the plastic splits over here, and that lets you get quite a bit of bend just beyond 90 degrees, which is pretty good for a baggy sculpt. There's also a swivel just above that knee joint, so that lets you also swing his leg out and in. Hasbro this time has also given us the bonus of a calf swivel just above the boot. And now we're down to his ankles, and he gets upward tilt that far as well as downwards. And finally ankle pivot outwards as well as inwards. This figure has good sculpting and a striking paint scheme, and he can also hold all his accessories, definitely looking really cool even in a neutral pose. He's surprisingly well articulated with that bulky sculpt and baggy pants, so you should be able to get him into a few dynamic poses. The articulation scheme is pretty impressive, and I'm still quite surprised that I could even get him into a kneeling position as well. Despite the positives of his sculpt and articulation, he does feel a little light on accessories, especially for a figure in the deluxe price point. Hasbro should have at least reused some of the accessories from the ROTJ Boba Fett, like the blast effects for his jetpack and the flamethrower effect over here as well. Once you borrow these effects from the ROTJ Boba Fett, this Boba Fett really feels like a much better figure, and definitely is elevated to the next level. I also think Hasbro should have also given him an interchangeable left fist, and that would have looked much more awesome when you use it with the flamethrower. Size-wise, Boba Fett stands at just about 6 inches, and that's just over 15 centimeters. For size comparisons, he's actually a little shorter than the ROTJ Boba Fett, and also much shorter than Cobb Vanth. Here he is with Mando, Grogu, and Luke, Bo-Katan and Koska Reeves, a Stormtrooper and a Clone Trooper, some Marvel Legends, and some G.I. Joe Classified series. The sculpt, paint, and articulation on Boba Fett are pretty great. However, he is short on accessories at this deluxe price point, and should have been given the jetpack and flamethrower effects, plus some new stuff like say his chain code hologram. Still, this figure is the iconic Book of Boba Fett figure, and is an eye-catching addition to your Star Wars collection. Please like and share this video, let me know what you think in the comments below, and subscribe to my channel for more toy reviews. Thanks for watching, take care and stay safe.